second week of the tutorial for Foundations of Cognitive Robotics. It's a course offered by Professor Bishak Bhattacharya from IIT Kanpur, and I am Suryadeep, the TA for this course. Okay, so just to give you a recap, so last week in week 1 we mostly studied smart materials. However, this week, that's week 2, we looked into the architecture of the brain and the structure of the neurons. So this week is mostly related to brains and neurons. So I have taken up 10 questions from previous iteration of this course, and I'll try to solve the questions to give you an idea of the questions that are posed for this iteration that's offered this year. And I have taken previous year's questions so that it doesn't overlap with this year's questions, which are for you to solve. If you have any questions related to the questions we discuss over here, you can raise your you can write it in the chat box, and I'll try to answer it at the end. Okay, so let's get started. So the first question is, a person shared his experience as, while reading a book, I feel a series of accompanying voices in my head, characterizing each sentence with an identity of its own, as if I am an individual who is speaking to someone on the street. What is this neurological condition in which senses tend to intertwine and stimulate several of the senses is referred to? So you have 4 options. The first is vertigo, second is synesthesia, third is dementia, and the fourth is neuralgia. So the right answer is the right answer is synesthesia. So what happens is that, like you can see in this example over here, the word synesthesia is written along with the digits from 0 to 9. What a person with synesthesia sees, it sees each letter with a different color. So this is one form of synesthesia. In another form, it happens that, let's say, the first case of synesthesia that was observed was when a person heard the sound of a trumpet but saw the color of scarlet. So it's the sense received was that of a sound, but also it activated the sense of vision, colors. So that's how it gets intertwined, and this is a very rare phenomenon. In around 2 to 4% of humans only this can be seen. So this is known as synesthesia, and this is the answer to this question. Moving on to the second question. Which of the following is a function of the brain stem? So you have 4 options: regulation of cardiac and respiratory function, relay of information from the body to cerebellum and cerebrum and cerebellum, controls basic body functions such as swallowing, regulating sleeping and breathing, and finally all of the above. So let us look at the brain stem. This part of the brain is called the stem of the brain. So this is the most primitive part of the brain. So the above portions are quite recent developments. This part is a very primitive, and it's almost found in all of the animals. So the stem comprises of 3 parts: the midbrain, this top portion, the pons region, and the medulla oblongata, this last region which connects to the spine. So the functions of the midbrain are alertness and arousal, elementary forms of seeing and hearing. So this is the midbrain's part. Facial movement and sensation, hearing, and coordinating eye movement, the pons region. And finally the medulla oblongata's part is basic living functions such as breathing, and it's vital to life and death. Controls involuntary functions like breathing, heart rate, pressure, blood pressure, swallowing, vomiting, and sneezing. So if you see the options from here, so the regulation of cardiac and respiratory function, so cardiac and respiratory functions are controlled by here, the medulla oblongata. Relay of information from the body to cerebellum and cerebrum is uh, is a mixture of midbrain and pons region, and basic functions of the body such as swallowing, regulating sleep and breathing again comes under basic living function, which is controlled by the medulla. So all of the above options are correct, and hence the answer D is the right one for this question. Coming to the third question, anything that can be viewed as perceiving its environment through sensors and acting upon the environment through effectors is called, you have four options: an agent, a cognitive robot, cognition, or cognitive intelligence. Now the right answer is A, agent. Why? So what is the difference between an agent and a cognitive robot? A agent senses its environment and acts upon it through effectors. A cognitive robot also does that. It senses the environment and uses that what it's perceived to act using effectors. But what is extra about cognitive robot is that it complies to physical and social norm of the environment that it is operating in. So it is a more intelligent type of an agent and not just an agent. So the right answer for this question is A. So it in this question it's not mentioned that the whatever it is, anything that has to perceive, that has to obey the norms, the physical and social norms of the environment, and hence only the first one is correct. Coming to the fourth question, so you have four activities: verbal, musical, analytical, and geometrical. Four mental functions, what you can say. So you have to group these following functions as controlled by the left and right hemisphere of the brain. So if you take a look at this picture, the left and the right brain, so what does the right brain controls and what does the left brain do? So the left brain controls the right side and the right brain controls the left side of the body. Other than that, the left brain usually looks into the logical side of things, so number skills, maths, written language, spoken language, objectivity, analytic, logic, reasoning. So these things are controlled by the left brain, whereas for the right brain, 3D shapes, music, intuition, creativity, imagination, subjectivity, synthesizing, emotion, face recognition, these are controlled by the right side of the brain. So now if you try to group them, so verbal, so where does verbal fit in? So verbal is a spoken language, so it's falls under left brain. Musical is a creative thing, it's in the right brain. Analytical, it's again comes to the left brain. And finally geometrical is related to art and 3D shapes, so that is the right brain. So the right answer is A and C, verbal and analytical for the left brain, and B and D, musical and geometrical for by the right brain, right hemisphere. So the correct answer is C. Moving on to the fifth question, the receptor neurons that convey touch, pressure, pain signals to the spinal cord are variants of bipolar cells called, you have four options: unipolar neurons, bipolar neurons, pseudo unipolar neurons, and multipolar neurons. Now if we look at the four types of neurons, it looks like this. So this is the cell body, this is the axon and dendrites. So you have, this is the unipolar, this is the multipolar, this is the bipolar, and pseudo unipolar. So for this question, the right answer is the pseudo unipolar. Now what is the difference between bipolar and pseudo unipolar is that a bipolar has two different processes emerging from the cell body. However, for the pseudo unipolar, it has there are two processes, but they fuse into one, and effectively there is only one process coming out of the cell body. So it receives the sensations from one side and relays it to the other end, whereas in the bipolar it transmits it receives information, senses from one side, processes it here, and then transmits through the dendrons. So the right answer is the pseudo unipolar neurons for this question. Moving on to the sixth question. The corpus callosum is a large arc of white matter in the brain. What is its function? So you have four options. First, save the haptic and echoic memory. So the haptic means touch and the echoic means sound. Then second option is keep a record of the episodic memory. The third is link the left and right hemispheres of the brain, and finally comprehension of speech. So this is how the corpus callosum looks. So this is the brain, and if you look from the underside of the brain, this white matter, this white tissue over here is the corpus callosum. So one side is the left brain and one side is the right brain. So basically the right answer is it's linking the left and right hemisphere of the brain. So this is the place where the left and right hemisphere connect to each other. If you see a side view of it, this green region is the corpus callosum. It's seated deep inside the brain. So the right answer for this question is C. Moving on to the seventh question. So the Broca's area is present in the frontal part of the left hemisphere of the brain. What is its function? So again we have four options: save the haptic and echoic memory, control speech function, link left and right hemispheres of the brain, and comprehension of speech. Now let us look at this figure. So Broca's area is this one, the purple region. This is located in the frontal part of the left hemisphere, and its main function is control the speech function. So whatever you speak, whether it's so it ensures that you are speaking logically and correctly, and so this part ensures that this yellow region is called the Wernicke's area. So the Broca's area and the Wernicke area are connected to each other. So this area is basically processes the sound that you receive. So it processes the words that you say as well as what you hear from others. So this one is for comprehension of speech. It's called the Wernicke's area, which is option D. But for this question they only asked for what is the function of Broca's area, and that is controlling the speech function. The purple region over here controls the speech function, and the answer is B. Moving on to the eighth question. Which lobe of the brain hemisphere is associated with vision processing? So there are four basic lobes of the brain: the temporal, occipital, parietal, and frontal. So in this figure the four lobes are shown. The red one is the frontal, the sky blue one is the parietal, the green one is the occipital, and the deep blue one is called the temporal lobe. So the functions of the frontal lobe are thinking, speaking, memory, movement. So mostly logical activities, and along with memory and movement. The parietal lobe is language, touch, taste, and smell. The temporal lobe is about hearing, learning, feelings, and fear. And the green one, the occipital lobe, is associated with vision, color, letters, the left-right orientation. So these are the four lobes of the brain. So therefore, to answer this question, which lobe of the brain is associated with vision processing, it's this green one, the occipital lobe. It is located right at the end of the very end of your brain, and it is here the visual cortex is located. Coming to the next question, question 9. For the following, arrange the brain neurons from higher to lower order. So you have six animals over here: the parakeet, house mouse, fruit fly, snails, jellyfish, roundworm. So what does it mean from higher to lower order? What does order of the brain neuron mean? It's basically, it signifies how much sophisticated actions can an animal take. So it directly correlates to the number of neurons present in its brain. So here is the list of the different animals and the number of neurons present in their brain. So as you can see, roundworm has 302, jellyfish has 5000, a snail has 11,000 neurons, a fruit fly has 250,000, a frog, from frog we are talking in terms of billions, so a frog has 16 million neurons, a house mouse has 71 million neurons, a flinch, a bird, has 131 million neurons, and a parakeet has close to 1 billion neurons. So now if we order them, we basically have to order them according to the number of neurons. So the parakeet belongs to the highest order because it has the highest number of neurons. So parakeet, followed by house mouse, fruit fly, snail, jellyfish, and roundworm. So the right answer is A. So this is the order in which the brain neurons are arranged from higher to lower order. Moving on to the final question of this discussion, which is question 10. So which part of the brain controls emotional experiences? So it's whether it's the pia mater, the hypothalamus, the limbic system, or the medulla oblongata. So the right answer is the limbic system. So a picture of the limbic system is shown over here. So this green region, purple region, and this yellow region all comprises the limbic system. So this is the part which, just if you can notice, is just above the corpus callosum, and this is the hypothalamus, which controls the pituitary gland. So this part of your brain is responsible for all the emotions that you feel: anger, sadness, joy. All of this is experienced by this portion of the brain, the limbic system, which is seated deep inside your brain and cannot be seen from the top. So the right answer for this question is C. So that brings to the end of our discussion for this week. So these were the 10 questions that I have picked from the previous year's questions, and I have solved them and tried to give as much hints and the backstory as I could. So if you have any if you have any doubts regarding the discussion, you can type it in the chat box and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you. So does anyone have any question? And let me go to the chat box. So if you have any questions, okay, it's look like nobody has any questions, so we can close the session for today, and I'll meet you again at the same time next week. Thanks for attending.